what I have here is my PPS H41 partially stripped down, and it uses the same M14 AGM gearbox in it. Now if you look at the air nozzle here, that when it's completely travelled forwards comes out approximately 16 millimeters. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to work on this as though it's actually 15 millimeters, so that there's a slight bit of pressure left at the end there. So basically this is the hop unit I made for the PPSH. Now it's just bits of scrap steel which I had, and I basically welded a few pieces together, drilled holes in it, and I put a brass shim in at one end and soldered it in. Now that actually has a internal bore diameter of 8 millimeters. Now this is just under 7 millimeters in width. Now the one I'm going to make for the BAR, I'm going to have a 7 millimeter hole in the end there. It's actually not so crucial. If you ever take a measurement on a real hop unit, you'll notice that when you slide the two things together, there is actually quite a bit of slack in the two units. It's basically the hop rubber which provides the seal right on the end of the air nozzle. That's the thing that keeps the air in. It's not actually the diameter of the air nozzle and the sides of the hop unit. They can be quite loose. You can see that there. But for this one I'm going to make it slightly tighter. So what we're looking at is the loading port on this. The center of the loading port is actually 12 millimeters in from the face there. So if I was to slide that on there, that goes right up against the gearbox, and the center of that loading port is 12 millimeters. What I found in the shed is I found this length of hexagonal brass bar. It's probably about 15 millimeters across flats. And just take a quick measurement. Yeah, it's 15 millimeters across flats. Now what I've done is I've drilled a hole which is 7 millimeters in diameter all the way down the inside of there, not right through it. It only goes approximately 5 centimeters into here. Now I've taken an approximate measurement inside the gun, and I've worked out that the overall hop unit length should be approximately 4 centimeters in length. Now the one I made for the PPSH, which is here, is approximately 5 centimeters in length. If I just take a quick measurement on that one, yeah, there, you see that's 5 centimeters. So I've got to make this one 1 centimeter shorter. Now looking at it, you can see it's possible to do that. Well, I certainly hope it is. So 1 centimeter shorter than that. Now if I make this all out of brass, I won't have as many pieces, different pieces of steel lying around here which I have to solder to. If I take my time and do this correctly, I should be able to drill the loading port just there. Whoop, nearly dropped that. Which is 12mm in from the end. Then I have to take a measurement and drill the point where the hop adjustment screw goes in. Now I may come up with a different system for adjusting the hop on this unit. On the PPSH I've just used a brass screw and it's worked very well. I've got no complaints about it at all. But I may see if I can work out an adjustable one where the adjuster is underneath, because it's going to be hard to adjust a screw on this one on a BAR because there's no open aperture above the hop unit. So I'm going to have to try and work out a unit which pulls downwards to put the hop pressure on, pretty much like the hop unit in the M14 Airsoft rifle does work. It has a screw which you adjust underneath, so I'm going to have to try and make something similar to that. Okay, so I've done a little bit of work on this hop unit. Now I've actually made it just over 4 centimeters. It's about 41 and a half or 42 millimeters long. Now, as I said, this brass is 15 millimeters across flats. If I was to measure it that way, it's 15 mil. Now, the center of the loading port, which is the feed from the magazine, that center is 12 millimeters in. Then on the opposite face you have the hop adjustment hole. Now that is actually 20 millimeters. That's actually 20 millimeters to the center from the gearbox face. Now the hole at this end from the gearbox is 7 millimeters diameter, and the hole at the rear I think was 10 millimeters, and that allows the hop up rubber slide in there on the end of the barrel. I've also drilled the last approximately 3 millimeters slightly wider to approximately 11 millimeters in diameter. Now that is basically so I can slide a small packing tube in the rear of it to hold the barrel straight inside the hop unit. I'll show you when it comes to assembling the unit how it works. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to solder the loading port tube from the magazine onto here, and what I'm using is I'm using a piece of scrap brass barrel, and this is it here. Now what I've done is this hole here is 6 millimeter hole that feeds in, and I'm using a 6 millimeter drill, the tail end of it, to fix this, or to hold it central while I solder the brass barrel to the brass hop unit. Okay, I've just used a a small butane torch, and I've also used a soldering iron at the same time, and just normal electrical solder. At the end of the day, people might say that soldering it isn't very solid, but these components are normally made out of plastic, so at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure soldering some brass is as good as having a component made out of plastic. The last one I did for the PPS H41, I made all out of steel and welded it, but I'm pretty sure that some well soldered brass is quite okay. And as you can see, if you do this right, you should still be able to remove the drill at the end of all this. What I have here is a BAR magazine which I managed to buy over the internet. It was £15 plus postage. Now the plan is to try and fit a high cap M14 magazine mechanism inside, and that's what I have here. This is the internals out of a high cap 400 something round mag. Now you can see the let's see, if you look at this slot here that's running along this crease in the magazine casing, the feed to the hop unit needs to be right smack in the center of that crease. So if you look at the end of that and we place that next to it, you can see it's possible to get that to work. Now, the other important thing is the bottom of the BAR mag is on a quite severe angle there, whereas obviously the original M14 mag isn't on an angle. So what I'm going to have to try and do is mount the bottom of this magazine on an angle inside the case, like that, and it has a small screw which goes in at the rear end here, and it obviously has to have a slot to ratchet the wheel, so the ratchet is going to have to be coming through a slot approximately there, and that screw hole will have to have a screw hole there to mount it inside the magazine. Now basically what the problem I have now is the top of this magazine has to be swung over on an angle. So what I've done is I've put a cut at this side of the mag, and I'm planning on trying to heat the plastic up gently here with a blowtorch. I could use an electric hot air gun, which may be less severe, but hopefully I can do it with either of these items. If I do it gently, I'm hoping I'll be able to put a bend so that that will then sit straight there. Then once that angle has been created and it's bent over, I might have to put some support work to hold it together a little bit inside there once it's finished. But once I've rocked that over, I can then ascertain the length that the magazine has to be cut to. I've got a bit of a guess, and I've drawn a line across there, but there's no point in me cutting that off until I've actually modified this magazine